This is another episode of Talks with Tyler ISD, a podcast about the passionate people who have a heart for students. This podcast is brought to you by Texas Bank and Trust. I'm your host, Jennifer Hines, and today we are diving into what makes a school community thrive, and we're here with a leader that's doing just that, Dr. Bobby Markle with Caldwell Arts Academy. Thank you for joining us for another Talks with Tyler ISD episode. Here we are again, yeah. So, I mean, this has been a big year for you, coming off of Principal of the Year for the district for Tyler ISD. Congratulations on that. And just tell us a little bit about your leadership style and your background for those that maybe have not met you before.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a great year. I mean, people say it's been a great year for me, but really it's been a great year for the school. I just happened to get to lead a school who thrives on trying to be successful and take education at a high level of excellence. And obviously, you know, people give me a lot of credit as leader, and I appreciate that. But I think what makes it work is, yes, my leadership style is very community-oriented, very supportive of all the individuals that work at the school, all the parents that are a part of the school, the community around the school. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of investment and time. And so I think one of my bigger leadership traits is relationships, you know, working with all these people to try to solve problems, give their kids and their families experiences. So it's a lot of work in that arena. And so being there for 9 years, obviously we've kind of put a foothold in what we do and what we stand for. And every year we just continue to say, okay, what is it we need to tweak? What is it we need to maybe get rid of that's not really working the way we want it to work? Or if it's not working the way we want it to work, you know, what do we do to make it work? And so stakeholders are a huge part of that. So another leadership style, I guess, I have is that I do take on feedback. Ultimately, it's my decision. If you work with me, you'll know that. I don't shy away from the responsibility of making the final decision because I have to eventually just live with it.
And you have to answer to it.
And I have to answer to it, to those above me sometimes. But I think when you get real input and people see that you're willing to take action on that feedback and action from those stakeholders, it just more investment comes, more people want to be a part of that. And then there's a big trust bridge there. You know, you start to bridge trust in an environment sometimes in education that is probably one of the most difficult tasks. You know, it's a unique place to be because everybody has an education experience. And so you have to remember that when a parent is upset or a parent is happy, either way, some of that relates to how they experience education. So the more you know about that, the more you take time to work with individuals and listen to their stories when they are giving you that feedback, the more you can make decisions as a collective that maybe either shows them doesn't have to be that way, you know, or really embraces what they want for their kid or what those kids want. I mean, another big thing that I think over the last few years I find the most important is what are kids' values? What do kids value in what we do? It's hard early on when you're trying to develop a school to do that because kids want new vending machines and kids want this and that. But as they learn and you are open as a leader to their feedback and can kind of guide them into really their thoughts, that's been something just not only heartwarming for me every time we get to execute something they want to do, but also empowers them. So when we say we've had a great year, I think it's ultimately a culmination of the stakeholders' input on what Caldwell is, what it's going to become, and I just get to lead it, you know.
That's wonderful. So you definitely, it sounds like, you know, make sure that you connect with the students where they see you not only as a leader, but an advocate, listening to them. Let's talk a little bit about your staff and your teachers. How do you support and empower them to do their best in the classroom and interacting with the kids and educating them?
Yeah, I would hope they'd say I'm around. So I'm pretty present. And it's not, you know, I think as I've gotten more and more in my tenure of doing this, some of the noise that leaders hear is how to be a leader, right? You know, you got to do this. This is the recipe. This is the formula. This is the thing.
Right.
I've just learned, whether I'm trying to, imitate somebody or I see something I like, the bottom line is be as authentic as possible by being present and have those connections. It doesn't matter if Principal A over here does a push cart in the hallways. Yeah, that may be a good social media thing, that may be a good thing, but if it doesn't work, if it's not what your teachers need, then it doesn't matter, because maybe I'm pushing the cart, but I'm really not present, or I'm pushing the cart and I didn't pop in, so it's all a matter of not just doing the thing, it's what you do as you're doing the thing. And so for me, it's just always been, show up to professional learning communities, PLCs, show up in classrooms as much as I can, show up to events and be present there, and following up. When you have a teacher who's going through some tough personal issues, it's not just one day of checking in, a week later, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's the ongoing relationship.
Absolutely. And I think it takes a lot of time, and as the school's grown and my schedule kind of adapts and changes, I try to empower others to mimic that same leadership style, so that no matter what, I'm present, even though it's really just setting the stage that's the expectation. So I think that's one. Obviously at Caldwell, we love to gather, and we love what we call family meals. So we eat a lot. That's one of our questions in interviews. If we have a potluck, what are you going to bring? And it's not just for fun. It's actually like legit. Like, what are you going to bring?
Yeah, you got to bring something. And it better be good.
So if it's exactly
bring your A game.
Yeah, and it's like, we're not going to knock you off, but at the same time, we want to know that you want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
That, if we're going to have, I can go out and buy pizza for everybody, but I think it's more intimate, more about everybody's perception and view when we all bring a different meal, a different soup. So it's like the little things like that. Yeah, it's
a part of them.
Yeah, and I think family is important. I don't use that term to describe the staff, but I use that term to describe the moments we have.
Yeah.
Because that's really where the relationship of that really takes place. We have our own families, we have our own stuff outside of school, so I never try to muddy that water.
Right.
But when we are gathering, when we have fellowship, I think it's a very family-oriented approach. And that, going back to what you asked about staff, who are their families and what are their families up to? So when we do staff events, some are family friendly because, they have kids. I have kids, and I want them to be a part of that.
Yeah, they need to be able to come.
I think just knowing your staff well and knowing, their ups and their downs, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, I think they value that. Giving them honest feedback about both of those things, they value that.
Absolutely.
Not muddying the what am I trying to tell you, they value that. And that takes time to learn. Conflict is hard, but when you can address it and help people get through those moments,
they come out stronger on the other side.
100% loyal. They become loyal to the organization, and that's the key. I want them loyal to the organization, not necessarily to me, because the organization is going to live well past my tenure as a leader. And as we establish standards and values and expectations, I think that's always what we're trying to do, is make it sustainable.
Well, and you have created a really good culture at Caldwell Arts Academy. Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like and feels like just on an everyday basis at Caldwell.
So I read a book one time about Disney, and it was all about creating magic, and I think that at our school, I want kids to feel when they walk through the doors, it's a magical experience. Not because we got themed things everywhere. We do stuff like that. We have dress-up days, transformation classrooms, but the magic comes from the experiences we give the kids, from small things to big things. So small things might be bubble parties. Hey, you did great, and we're going to throw some bubbles. And when you have kindergartners in a playground and bubbles start flying, I hope they remember those things, that it wasn't just about schooling, it was about joy and experiences, because when you can break down the barrier that this is a four-walled building that you are required to go to, I always have dreamed of that as a school. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I had a lot of that experience growing up, but as I got older and realized I value that for my own kids, and that we've tried to inject that. So I would think if you walk through our school, even if it's a given day, you're going to feel something magical. That's a lot of feedback we get. And then the other thing about culture for me is going back to student agency. You know, do the students believe we care beyond just, hey, we're required to care?
Right.
You know, care comes in, you know, even discipline. You know, are you fair? Do they see that you're being equitable? I think is important. Do they see that you're going to respond, and that yes, it's difficult sometimes, but they see that you're willing to put a firm stance on something. But they also see the flip side of that is when they are recognized, that you're celebrating them just as hard, maybe even harder, because yes, we have to deal with this, but at the same time, we're here because of these great things. My joke is when I walk into our middle school morning meeting, we usually have a morning meeting as a whole group. They never know, you know, or is Mr. Markle here to talk about something that's happened and remind us of expectations, or is he here literally just to brag on us? And so, you know, I think they understand that both are important. And so that's a culture that I think creates opportunity, especially with our middle schoolers. I mean, elementary, they just love anything. I mean, they're like puppies, man. They just want to
hug you and love you and be loved and have fun.
I think as a parenting style, you know, and a leadership style, like I try to let those moments just happen and not be so restrictive. And so if you come into our school, I'm not saying every school needs to do this. That was my point earlier, but yeah, kindergartners skipping in the hallway, I think is absolutely the most adorable thing in the world. So as long as they're not, you know, tearing down things and being crazy, I think let them be a kid. Let them just, they are there for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
So
I'm there
don't
for
worry
8
about
hours.
Those small things.
I'm there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So it's just trying to make sure there's a balance between obviously our high achievement. You know, these kids are working hard, and everything they do is balanced with when that moment's over, we're gonna have fun a different way. And so like our whole coming up at the end of the year, when we do the end of the year stuff, it's all about what is gonna be fun. What is it that kids wanna come to school and be a part of? So everything from sending 8th graders on field trips with little kids, everything from having events that they help curate, they help design the end of the year, I think helps that culture be magical. And I feel like we get better at it every year. There's always room for improvement, but
Well, and y'all finished the year with a bang and all sorts of great celebrations. Let's look back on your year, because you have had a lot of achievements as a school, as the principal. Tell us about some of those highlights.
Sure. So it started really June of 24 with receiving Leader in Me Lighthouse status. You know,
That's great.
I've told this story, so if you've heard it, I apologize, but for those of you who haven't, you know, we really set out to do that because as a school, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna make a goal of what is the highest level of excellence in that thing. So when Leader in Me says Lighthouse is a high level of excellence symbol of what we do, okay, well then that's what we're gonna strive for. We may not get it every time, but if we're striving for it, you never know. So when we did that, it was all about student leadership and investing in that. And so I think over time, our school has definitely become better because we took it seriously, and everything from student jobs to goal setting to student-led conferences really has emerged into this thing where, man, kids are just eager to do things for us, and they want to show up when you ask to come interview a teacher or come be a part of this conversation. They want Lighthouse meetings. They want to talk about next year. They want, because like I said earlier, all that feedback gets utilized to some extent.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, in addition to that, in September, we got recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School.
Which is huge. One of 31 in Texas.
31 in Texas, and first in Tyler ISD. And I think that a lot of feedback we got was it's about as fitting as you could get, because I think our school, what people forget is you see the now, but think about the 9 years of process, 9 years of journey, 9 years of decisions to be eligible for it, and then to be decided upon by Texas and saying, hey, this meets a criteria. I mean, you can't ask for anything bigger. And I told this story, I think, before to people, but I'll tell it again because it's part of my own personal journey. I had that goal 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I had heard a principal. I didn't know really what Blue Ribbon was, but they had talked about it. And back then you could apply for it. So I just, in my head, thought, okay, well,
now
one
you
day,
have to be nominated.
Yeah, now you have to be nominated. So I thought one day I'm going to go do that. That is one thing I can strive for. Of course, they took the nomination process out. So now it's like, okay. But what the reality that hit me in September is we were always applying for it.
Right. Every year you're applying
every
without
year,
even knowing.
Without even knowing. And so I think that's something that other leaders should take stock in, that even though the goal isn't something you can just go grab, as long as you set it and you think about it. And one regret on that is I wish I'd have been more vocal about that, but it just seems so not possible, right? You know, it's national Blue Ribbon, it's a national recognition.
And you went all the way to Washington.
And we did, yeah. They bring you to Washington.
Tell us about that.
It's fantastic. They treat you, I think, with the honor that educators deserve. It was a room, so 31 in the state, but about 300 across the nation. To be around professional educators and having a moment where, yes, everybody's got an opinion about what education is and what it should be and who should have responsibility and rights in that. There was a moment where all that's pushed aside, and it was just a big thank you and a big recognition that why are we not highlighting more, not just neat things that are happening, but where excellence in education is versus always focused on the improvement part of it. And I think I wish people could go be a part of something like that more often. You know, we have lots of conferences in education, there's a conference for everything. But I don't think they spend a lot of time like they chose to do this. So, you know, being there is super, super interesting. You meet a lot of really interesting schools that do some really interesting things that you're just like, wow. In that same vein, you know, we were asked to be a part of a review of what we do. And so seeing some other schools, you know, that got the award, but also what their themes and their programming is, I mean, it's just inspiring. I mean,
you probably got a lot of ideas.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, oh goodness.
You know, just thinking about education innovation, that we're so closed off sometimes at the possibility, because there's a lot of bureaucratic logistics that come in play when you're dealing with finances and you're dealing with, you know, personnel and all that. But when you see others do it, it's like, then what are we waiting on? If we want to do something great, just go for it.
Just do it. Yeah.
And it's going to take time, and that's okay, as long as you've got a vision for it. So that was what I kind of walked away from.
I love it. Well, and while you were there, I mean, you said 300 across the nation, but from those 300, several leaders were chosen for an award, and you happened to be one of those few leaders that was chosen.
Yes. So the Terrell Bell Award is based off a former Department of Education secretary who really started the Blue Ribbon Award back in the early 80s. And yes, there is an opportunity that you can apply and tell your story. And
you did?
And I did. And it
was great.
It came out. Yeah, it was great. You know, again, sometimes you go through your career or your life, I mean, I'm sure people could relate to this, and you just don't know if your effort's doing anything, if your work is really valued in the way that you want it to be. I mean, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's not a lack of gratitude. It's definitely about working so hard that you want to win. You know, a winning attitude is understanding that as long as I strive for it, I might lose every now and then. It may not seem fair every now and then.
Right.
So to win just was like taking all those setbacks or all those failures, as you want to label them as during your career, and saying, those were just learning opportunities that really, maybe I didn't get this, but look at what it made happen. So that was how I felt there. And they, you know, again, just treating those leaders and myself as representatives to something great about what education is, and Caldwell being on that stage with me. You know, that's
because it's a win for you. It's
Yes.
a win for the kids. It's a win for the staff. I mean, it's just a win-win-win all the way around.
And it was neat. You know, it was live streamed, so the school stopped and watched
how
it
fun.
briefly when I did. I mean, they have school to do, and
Right.
you know, I mean, so, but you know, to hear the stories and when I came on stage, you know, they live streamed that, and they live streamed the award for the blue ribbon. And so just to see the videos coming out of classrooms, you know, again, it's nice to just settle in and say, wow, okay.
Wow, we accomplished this.
We did
this.
We did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, now.
And then.
Yes.
Yeah. So then, you know, later on, I received Principal of the Year.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people were very gracious with their comments. A lot of people were very gracious with, you know, telling me how proud they were, and obviously that it was something that they were not shocked by, but that way to go. But for me, and I said it briefly in the speech, I'm not saying that trumps all these other things, but again, I guess I'm just one of those people who, the award is not the most important thing to me. Because tomorrow I got to go back to work.
Right.
Tomorrow I got to go do this.
You're back to the grindstone.
I'm not in a parade. I'm not, you know. But I will say, to be recognized by people that you spend a lot of time putting work in, the district mainly, no matter when you get that, and what are the circumstances behind it, it's still a huge honor that I don't think, again, trumps a national honor, but it is homegrown honor. And it's like your mom being proud of you, right?
Yeah.
Like it's great that everybody loves me and everybody likes that I got at something, but if my mom says she's proud, and that's how it really feels. And
it's
so,
like your work family.
Yeah, exactly. So the
Yeah.
culmination of that has been really nice. I wouldn't have asked for any better circumstances for all of that to come unfold. And then, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, like during one of the school board meetings this year, you know, our kids were recognized for sweepstakes and orchestra. Our kids were recognized for their VASE accomplishments because they're having art put up in the state capitol. I mean, yes, I've had a great year, but I will
so
continue
have the
to say that
students,
the
yeah.
students are, and Caldwell is. So just busting through that opportunities for kids and our community, and even, yes, myself, has been just a delight, for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, now we're in the summer. We're
Yeah.
halfway through the summer. Kind of what are you working on now?
Man, I think everything. It just feels like, you know, you're thinking about what is it that instructionally we need to be focused on, you know, with the STAR test changing the way it has, becoming more difficult. Prior to this, you know, last summer, I think another thing that makes, I think, my leadership, I don't want to say different, but one thing I work on that my staff would tell you is trying to read the tea leaves. You know, what is really coming up? What is really happening that we need to be paying attention to? And so the STAR test is hard. And we've got to teach kids how to tackle hard things. And so actually over a year ago, but really fine tuning it over the last 24 months, what does that look like in instruction? When we talk about productive struggle, when we talk about rigor, it can't just be a textbook response. It's got to be actionable. It's got to be something. So one of the things we'll lead into August with, for sure, with staff is understanding where that happens. So this year they've spent a really great year. So first year was all about setting that stage.
Right.
It started with the change in the new STAR test and, you know, how do we tackle the ECRs, which is the extended responses for those that don't care for education jargon, because there's a lot of it.
There is so many acronyms.
And then this year was all about just the classroom and how do you design a classroom with productive struggle across all disciplines. This next year is, what do we know as educators about really where that's going, what that looks like? So I think that's one big thing. I think with students, it's all about the trip. Where are we going? And I mean that both figuratively, but also literally. One of those spaces is trying to maybe take them worldwide. Now that might start small with trying to find a place our band can go play or our choir can go sing at, but I don't think we need I think we need a big broader scope of what experiences kids could have. So I think we've been looking at big audacious goals, WIGs as we call them, to, you know, where can we take kids and what would that experience look like and be like? How do we collaborate? You know, maybe it's not just our community. Maybe we need to go work with others and say, okay, what can we do collaboratively? Yeah. And so there's that. And then I think for us, really just developing our parent engagement. We've got a great PTA and a great Caldwell Arts Alliance. But if you say you want to be the best, then you got to start thinking, like, what does that really look like? So this year, we had kind of a pause year with some of our PTA leadership and that, and Caldwell Arts Alliance. But in that moment, we really became self-reflective of what do we want to do. And so I've had some really great parent engagement on not only electing board members for these organizations, but they're planning what it looks like for them, and they're planning how do we bring more families into this fold. Our campus is unique. We're not a neighborhood campus.
Right.
So you don't know where anybody in your class lives, because they just live from all over.
They live everywhere.
Yeah. And we don't have, I mean, most of our families, because of our population and our diversity, they're all working families. So trying to bring that together is not as easy as I think people think, because when we have a show, there's 800, 1,000, 1,200 people in the audience. Right. But they're all still strangers sometimes. So how do you foster that on a scale that goes across? And that's been a goal of mine for a while. But every year we kind of just tweak. And so this year I think we've got some better direction on that. So I think that's going to be, in fact, I'm hoping in the next month people will see we're actually planning a PTA Caldwell Arts Alliance teacher collaboration as a part of PD, so that they are fostering relationships. They're you know, not just, hey, these are the people I send a form to and they give me money, or whatever. The parents are excited about it. The teachers are excited about it, because who knows what's going to come out of that, other than like, hey,
it's a unique collaboration that hasn't happened before.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you know where you're going with the students, you know where you're going with the teachers, you know where you're going with the PTA and the Art Alliance and all of that. Sounds like you've got a great year coming up next.
I hope so.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I don't think so. It's just like, I mean, you know, I'm blessed to be here again. I mean, I think
well, congratulations again on all of your accolades over the past year. Well deserved. Keep up that great work.
We're trying.
And, you know, I know all the parents and the students appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Talks with Tyler ISD. If you'd like to learn about more things Tyler ISD, you can always subscribe to our newsletter at get.tylerisd.news. We would like to thank our sponsor, Texas Bank and Trust. Subscribe to Talks with Tyler ISD on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Please share this episode with your friends and family.